Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is a game that really takes you on a journey. You start off by rolling through the streets of your home neighborhood in the city of Los Santos, but over the course of the game, you'll end up exploring dense redwood forests, driving across the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, and even stargazing on the side of the road in the middle of a vast desert. The whole thing kind of ends up feeling like a road trip, which is super interesting for a Grand Theft Auto game. So today, in order to explore and appreciate every corner of this iconic map, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to take you on a road trip. Starting at CJ's house on Grove Street, we're going to drive all across San Andreas's many iconic highways and back roads, stopping at American landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge and the Las Vegas Strip, but also places you've never even thought to look at, like creepy gas stations on the side of the road and small towns in the middle of the desert that the game completely ignores. I might even have a really interesting fact to share with you about the game's airport. We'll see. So at the very beginning of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, you spend a lot of time here, which is the first location on our journey. This is Grove Street, which is the place that the main character CJ calls home. It's on the east side of the city of Los Santos, and the reason you're going to spend a lot of time here is because coming here is the only way to save the game. In these old Grand Theft Auto games, there is no autosave, there's no quick save. You have to come back to this house, go through this door, and go all the way back into the kitchen if you want to save the game. Which means that for the first several hours of GTA San Andreas, every single time you sit down to play, you're going to start in this house and you're going to end in this house. Now, this sounds annoying. It is annoying. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but because you have to do this, CJ's neighborhood, Grove Street, becomes your neighborhood, and it functions just like a real neighborhood would. You learn how to drive there from any place in the city without even looking at the map because you have to do it every single day. You know what it looks like in the morning, noon, and night because you see it every time you come out the front door. You even grow familiar with the nameless NPCs that hang out outside. You might even feel bad if you run one of them over. It happens. Anyway, now that we know where home is, let's hop in our van and get on the road. The way the streets of Los Santos are laid out makes it weirdly confusing to get around, and there's not a clear central highway that you can just hop on to travel long distances. So you end up having to take a couple of highways down to this beach area, and then you can take that road west out of the city and onto some back roads. And yes, I am actually driving this whole road trip in one shot, and I'm gonna try to keep this van alive the whole time if I can. We'll see. As you can see, it already got smashed up in a little road rage incident, but it's all good. To the west of Los Santos, you'll find Flint County, which is very different from where you spend the early hours of the game. There's lots of space full of farms and big green trees and hills. The whole area has a real Northern California sort of libertarian, but I'm secretly actually a Republican vibe. Sorry. You know who you are. There's a highway you can hop on that follows the southern edge of the island, and it's along that very highway that you find the next place I want to stop, the gas station. I remember the first time I saw this gas station. It was super early in my time with the game, and I was heading back from this little town on the western edge of the map, and I remember it was super foggy, and I was walking along the highway rather than driving, because I like to do that sometimes. And as I walked back along the highway in the fog, eventually I saw this gas station in the distance in the middle of what felt like nowhere. And as much as I think this was meant to feel like a cute little Americana stop on a country road, it actually just feels kind of scary, especially at night. I ended up spending a minute walking around when I realized that no NPCs ever actually pull into the gas station parking lot either. There are cars parked in the parking lot, but they never go anywhere, and there are cars on the highway, but they never come in. They actually let you go inside the gas station, which is also really weird because it loads this super brightly lit, shiny convenience store interior, which has 3 NPCs that also never leave. And maybe the scariest thing I discovered while here is that if you punch the gas pumps, they make a really deep, frightening bang. It's a super weird place, especially if you come across it on a foggy night. After I left the gas station, my van ended up getting absolutely wrecked in a multi-car accident involving the police, so we're gonna have to be on the lookout for a repair shop as we go forward. We passed through a small town which did not have a repair shop, and then got onto a dirt road and started to make the slow and steady climb all the way up to the next place we're looking at on our journey through San Andreas, which is Mount Chiliad. When I tell you I had to have the gas pedal held all the way down on this drive to actually get this van to make it up this hill, I was laughing so hard. I guess I just assumed that because it was a video game, all the roads would be easy to drive on for all of the vehicles, but it was not. She was struggling. Anyway, the drive up to the top of Mount Chiliad is really fun because all of these roads are really tight switchbacks that snake back and forth, and you can't just do the GTA 5 thing of driving straight up the side because it's way too steep and inaccessible. So you're just trudging along, back and forth, being careful not to to fall off the edge, but it's all worth it when you finally reach the top and see one of the coolest and weirdest places in the game. This big flat parking area has 2 other vans and a bicycle in it, which implies someone else is up here, but there isn't. And when you stand in the middle of it and look around, all you see is sky. It was actually super cloudy when I came here this time around, which made everything feel super weird and isolated from the rest of the game. Like this flat plateau was the entire world. There's an observation platform all the way on the other side of the parking area that you can walk down to, and from it you can see the clouds, which are highly detailed but never actually move, and some of the world down below that we just drove through to get out here. It's weird to think back on when I came here early in my time with the game and how in all of the hours since then I've never had any reason to come back. None of the missions that I ended up playing had me come up here, and once you leave this area of the map, it's a little bit of a hassle to get back to, so you just never do, unless you take a road trip, I guess. I waited for the sun to set and then the fog to clear, and then I hiked my way up to the very top of the mountain on this ridge because it has one of my favorite views in the game where you can just stand and slowly spin the camera around to see the perfectly still world with the stars and the clouds and the moon all just suspended in the air. Now, I originally wrote something in the script here that said, like, isn't it crazy that something like this is in a Grand Theft Auto game? But then when I actually read this back, I kind of realized this is something that's just in most Grand Theft Auto games since GTA 3. Like, we think of them as these very exciting kind of crime games, and they definitely are that. But they all do have these really beautiful, quiet, solitude moments, at least if you play them like I do, you know? Anyway, after I finished at the top of the mountain, that's phrasing, I got back on the highway as the sun started coming up, and I headed off towards our next destination, out of the woods and on to much nicer highways. Now, you can tell we're getting closer to another city because we're going through these fancy highway tunnels, but the place we're headed is actually just before the city, and it's an any Austin favorite, San Fierro International Airport. Speaking of correct ways to play Grand Theft Auto games, you have to stop and look at every airport in a Grand Theft Auto game, and this one is no exception, especially because for whatever reason, they let us, a civilian in a 1992 Chevy Astro, drive into the restricted area and onto the airfield. I'm known around the world as the guy who made the video about whether GTA's airports are realistic, but we actually didn't cover San Andreas in that video, so let's take a quick second to do that now. The most realistic thing about this airport is the world's greatest underpants, MeUndies. Welcome to the sponsorship. I know, that came out of nowhere. I really hit you with it, but just let me explain. I actually asked MeUndies if instead of talking about their product today, I could just talk about the airports and put their logo in the corner. And of course, they politely reminded me that they're paying me a lot of money and that while they appreciate my love of airports, they do need people to know that they make great underpants. And believe it or not, that's the first time MeUndies has ever said no to me because they're extremely reasonable. Anyway, the only thing worth talking about here are the runway signs, which are, MeUndies. Listen, I am being 100% honest with you when I say that I love my MeUndies, and every pair I have, I happily paid for with my own money. I own one pair of MeUndies for every day of the week, so I never have to wear anything else. I am a MeUndies stan. If you ever see me in person, ask me to show you my underpants, and you will see that they are MeUndies. Do not do that. But just know that if you do see me walking around and you look down at my lower section, underneath these beautiful wide pleated pants are in fact my MeUndies. MeUndies has products for every size, shape, and gender, including things like bralettes, swimwear, socks, t-shirts, which I also have some of, I wear them to the gym, and a lot more. And then if you don't like them, guess what? As long as you didn't get them dirty, you can return them for a full refund, no questions asked. Well, I guess one question. They will ask you, did you shit in them? As long as the answer is no, you're good. Go to MeUndies.com/AnyAustin and use promo code AnyAustin to get up to 50% off your subscribe and save deal. And yes, even if you use subscribe and save, which makes it cheaper, you can return it to get your money back. Do not worry. That is MeUndies.com/AnyAustin, promo code AnyAustin for up to 50% off your subscribe and save deal. There's really only one thing I want to tell you about here at San Fierro Airport, and that has to do with the red portion of signs like this here. These are runway number signs, which basically means that they indicate that you're about to cross over onto an active runway. Runways are numbered. You can see that this sign is for a runway called 24 right, and in GTA San Andreas, there are signs for 4 different runways: 33 right, 15 left, 06 left, and 24 right. Now, none of these runways exist in the game. The only runway that actually exists in the game is runway 69, of course. I wonder if they'll do runway 67. Never mind. But I was looking at these signs and I couldn't help but wonder, where would they have stolen these numbers from? Because these are all believable runway numbers. These numbers could exist. unlike the signs we saw in GTA 5. So they must have just yoinked them from a real airport sign and copied them into the game, right? And it turns out there's actually one airport in the world that I could find that has all of these exact runways. Toronto Pearson International Airport in Toronto, Canada, which has all of these runways. It also has a few more, but that's beside the point. And guess what? Rockstar Games actually had an office in Toronto at the time of the development of GTA San Andreas, and they still do. So maybe someone on the team was flying to Toronto to check on something, and then they snapped some pictures of the airport for the team to use to make San Andreas. Pretty neat. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's head out of the airport, get back on the road, and head towards our next stop. The city we're headed to is called San Fierro, and on the outskirts of it, there's a little industrial area, which thankfully has a repair shop we can stop in so we don't end up blowing up our van. It should only take a moment, and then bam, much better. With that out of the way, it's time to head up the road and into the heart of the second city on our trip. When you get to San Fierro for the first time, it's amazing how different it feels from Los Santos. The streets feel way cleaner, the buildings are nicer, the sidewalks are emptier, and it is way less flat. There are also green spaces everywhere with parks every few blocks and trees lining every street. But it also feels a little bit sterile. The lighting is a lot more blue and gray in contrast to the yellow and brown of Los Santos, which makes the whole city feel a little bit colder. The skyscrapers are a little more intimidating, and they're almost always looming in the distance. It feels like a totally different place with a different culture and different people. In terms of specific places I want to show you in the city, the first one is a real tourist trap, the Windy Road. This is a real San Francisco landmark that I felt we had to stop and see because obviously we're on a road trip, but the reason it stands out to me in the context of GTA is because it's one of the handful of places in the game that actually kind of feels like the place that it's based on. Standing up here looking out this way, I'm not going to say it looks like San Francisco necessarily, but there's a little bit of San Francisco feeling to it. That combination of green space with tight, clean skyscrapers and kind of quaint streetlights and architecture. It's a really nice place to walk through slowly, especially at night when those streetlights come on. Another thing I like about this place is right at the top of it, you'll find one of the weirdest streets in the entire game. Perfectly identical white houses on both sides of the street, and for some reason pedestrians and cars seem to spawn here way less than they do in the rest of the city. Sometimes you can even find it completely empty. Anyway, there's one other place I want to stop at quick before we hit the road and get on with our journey, and it's just a few blocks to the west of the windy street. The Super Save. I've never said that out loud, and it felt weird. Not only is it important to stop at grocery stores on a road trip to stock up, but it's important to stop at grocery stores on a road trip for vibes. At least if you're road tripping through a Grand Theft Auto game. Large supermarkets in Grand Theft Auto games aren't actually very common, which is weird considering how vital they are to modern life, and this Super Save in West San Fierro is actually the only one in the entirety of San Andreas. I'm going based on memory here, but I'm not even sure if there are any supermarkets like full-on big retail chain type stores in GTA 4 or 5. I think there might be a boarded up one in one of the small towns of 5, but the point is it's just not common. So color me surprised when I drove through this parking lot and saw that not only were the lights on inside, but there were cars in the parking lot and, amazingly, interactive shopping carts. I think part of the reason games avoid buildings like this is that they are so common and accessible in real life that if you saw one in a game and you couldn't go inside, it would stick out like a sore thumb. But actually modeling something as boring as a grocery store for people to go inside of would be just an insane amount of work for not very much payoff. So they avoid that issue altogether by glossing over their existence most of the time, and you don't really notice it until you do. Now, the other reason why I like coming to this part of San Fierro is that it doesn't really feel like San Fierro. Take a look at this map of the game from Map Genie with all of the mission markers enabled. There is only one mission that actually starts in the western half of San Fierro, and even the places you go in the main story missions almost totally neglect that half of the city. So you don't really end up going there very often, and as a result, you don't get familiar with many of the weird little places that it has. For example, did you know that if you come to these houses on the western side of the city and jump down behind them, there's this really weird green ditch that stretches for about 100 yards? I'll bet you didn't, even though it's one of the coolest and weirdest spots in the entire game. That's what I mean. It's just an area of the game that you've never really formed a relationship with, so coming here ends up feeling like seeing someone you never met, and someone's like, yo, this is your sister from, or cousin, whatever, and you're like, nah, I've never met this woman in my life. Okay, kind of a weird analogy, but I like the shopping carts. It's time to leave San Fierro, and we're gonna do it by heading heading north along this road. Not far from where we found the weird grass ditch behind the houses, we turned the corner to see another iconic American landmark, Gant Bridge. It's based on the Golden Gate Bridge in real life, of course, and just like in real life, it gives a real energy to the character of San Fierro. It's truly a beautiful sight, especially at sunset, which you'll see in a second. But before we actually get on it and head off to our next destination, I wanted to point out a strange little place I found underneath it. Along that same road we were taking, just away from the grassy ditch, you'll find this turnoff, which appears to be some kind of strange parking lot. I don't know what this is, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but when I saw it on the side of the road, obviously I had to pull off and look at it. Just really weird. And you know, being underneath huge bridges is also really weird and a fun thing to do. It's about as close to feeling like a lost penny as you're ever gonna get in real life. You know, like you're just tucked away under this massive piece of furniture, never to be found. There's a kind of peaceful stillness to it. So if you're in San Fierro, be sure to stop down underneath the Gant Bridge and look out over the water for a minute. And if you have time, don't forget the weird parking lot. Anyway, the sun is about to set and we need to get out of the city. Driving across the Gant Bridge at sunset is truly one of San Andreas's nicest things to do. And believe it or not, the game doesn't actually ever force you to do it. The lighting is perfect, the colors are beautiful. It's really one of those moments that gives San Andreas its unique identity within the Grand Theft Auto series. Once you get across, you'll find the town of Bayside, and behind the town of Bayside is this huge, steep mountain that blocks the edge of the world from view. That mountain is where you and I are about to go. But unlike Mount Chiliad, where we went earlier, this mountain is not named, and it's not meant to be climbed up. But if you continue along the highway a bit through this tunnel up here, and then when you get to the other side of the tunnel, pull off the road out onto the right and hop out of the car, be sure to watch for oncoming traffic. You can, with a little effort, get on top of this retaining wall and then slowly make your way up to the top of the first ridge. Once you're up there, you'll be able to climb all the way back around to the mountain behind Bayside. It's a fun climb and it gives you a great view of the Gant Bridge and Bayside itself at sunset, and you can even see a bit of San Fierro out there in the fog. Now technically it was evening when we came here, but I'm using this daytime clip because it's prettier. Here's the sunset clip from the original road trip. Beautiful, but the real magic and the whole reason that we're up here is only visible after the sun sets, and we've got to walk along this ridge a little bit further to see it. Almost there, okay, that right there. These lights. Anyone want to tell me why there are these lights lining the top of the mountain here? Way up here where nobody would ever go for any reason? My first thought was that it was some sort of thing they do to help boats or planes not hit the mountain at night, but I know a lot about planes, I don't know if you knew this, and I'm pretty sure we don't put lights on top of the mountains, we just use maps. And in maritime navigation, lights are usually in towers, like lighthouses, or like stacked on top of each other rather than side to side, so that you can align yourself with a particular spot on along the shore. So I'm not really sure where the inspiration for these came from. If anybody knows, please tell me. And it's funny because when you see them at night from far away, you just kind of gloss over them and you kind of just think, oh yeah, sure, lights, you know, people put lights everywhere, this is America. But it wasn't until I actually took the time to climb up here that I realized it's not just, you know, like little points of light floating in space. They literally have hardware for the lights on top of this ridge. Maybe it's a thing I just never learned about. I also don't know, I couldn't figure out why the lights change color throughout the night, but they do. Here's a quick time lapse showing that it adjusts as the time of night changes, so I assume this lighting is just kind of tied to some of the underlying lighting in the engine, but I'm not going to do any tests or anything right now. And honestly, it might be the most ignored place in the entire game, but on top of that, this is actually the farthest away from home that you can get in San Andreas. There is no place on the map in this game that is a greater distance from Grove Street than standing on top of this mountain. Kind of interesting to think about. It feels like we've just gone so far away. And we have, but I didn't really realize that until now. By the time we finished up on this ridge, it was becoming light out and it was raining a ton, so I hopped back in the van and took off, headed towards our next destination. We had to do a little bit of a tricky merge onto a smaller highway that would take us further north, and pretty soon the landscape started to change from the seaside greens of Bayside and San Fierro to something more rocky, dusty, and strange. You'll have to go through the little town of El Quebrados, and then past that there's this red bridge that we need to go over that spans some kind of lake or reservoir. And this bridge is important because once we cross over this bridge, we are in the desert. New part of the country, new biome. And all the coolest things in the desert are down long, bumpy dirt roads, so we're going to turn off here. This is an easy turn off to miss, so keep your eyes open, and head up these cliffs to get to our next destination, which is a place I like to call the Carson Dam Overlook. There are some fun little weird structures up here, like this abandoned mining cabin thing, but the main reason we want to come here is for the sunset. By this point in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, you've seen multiple cities, forests, farmlands, American landmarks, and small towns. But the first time I came up here, pulling up to this exact road just before sunset like we are now, was the moment that I decided that San Andreas truly was as good as people had made it seem. We're up here above the Carson Dam, another American landmark, this time based off the Hoover Dam, and I've been trying to figure out why this was the place that did it, because on paper this spot is nothing. It's a dirt road and a nice view, but I think it's the color. Everything we've driven through so far has been green or gray or that sort of hazy Los Santos yellow, and then you come up over this ridge at exactly the right time of day and the entire world is suddenly orange. Cliffs are orange, the dam is glowing, even the water in the reservoir is doing something completely different than the water back in San Fierro. Nobody made me come up here when I came through here the first time. Rockstar just built a place where the sunset happens to hit like this, and then trusted that eventually some idiot in a van would come up the highway and pull up into this spot at the exact right moment. And we did. I watched the entirety of the sunset here and decided just to stay parked here all night, and because of that, I was treated to a really beautiful sunrise to start the next day of our journey, which left me energized to head to the final new city of our trip before turning to go back home. The drive to the next city, which is called Las Venturas, is full of fun little roadside attractions and towns. One of the most well-known is this little UFO-themed bar and cafe near the military base, but there's also big giant radar dishes doing God knows what, full-on abandoned Old West ghost towns you can explore, and crucially, a town named Fort Carson that we're going to stop in next. Now, technically, the only reason I stopped in Fort Carson is because there is a pay-and spray where I can fix the van, because obviously it continues to get beat up by driving it around. But when I was here to fix the van, I kind of got taken in by the atmosphere of the town itself. Fort Carson is a small town on the outskirts of Las Venturas, and the reason I wanted to bring attention to it today is because the game never does. This is an entire town with a bar and a bowling alley and the best home goods store in the desert, and the game never has you come here. There's no content that guides you to Fort Carson in GTA San Andreas. I spent all day walking through the streets here, and as the sun set, I started noticing that Fort Carson is kind of surrounded by big, slightly scary infrastructure, a huge military radar dish on the mountain to one side, and oil fields to the east just pumping away indefinitely. It gives you this distinct feeling that when you're in Fort Carson, you are not nearly the most important thing here. This town is here to support oil production, not the other way around. And that's a weird and hopeless kind of feeling, which makes it feel strange to be watching all of the old, slow NPCs stumbling through the streets, reciting their voice lines to one another. You know, normally the voice lines in this game are really funny and kind of odd, and they still are, but being in this town makes them take on this kind of sad undertone. Thankfully, we don't live here, so we get to leave, not like the NPCs. We drove through the night past more weird roadside gas stations and intimidating oil fields, and my intention was to drive until morning so we could make it to the last city on our trip, but something beautiful happened on the way and I had to pull over and show it to you. This doesn't always happen, but sometimes at night in the desert in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the sky turns this beautiful shade of purple. It doesn't last long, so this is really the only footage of it that I got, and sometimes it's way more vibrant than this, but I really wanted to give a shout out to whoever came up with this idea, because making the sky purple is obviously not a very realistic thing to do. The sky is, of course, not actually purple at night in the desert in the American West, and yet sometimes, late at night, the sky feels kind of purple at night in the American West. There's something really evocative and true about it, and it serves to make this region of the game, once again, feel totally distinct from every other region. I love it so much. Anyway, we hopped back on the road and kept driving until we finally saw the sign for the third and final city in the game, which you might be able to guess is modeled after Las Vegas, Nevada. It's called Las Venturas, which I believe means the fortunes in Spanish, and boy, is this city full of fortune. Themed casinos, massive hotels, a bunch of really weird empty parking garages. It's a real paradise. And I don't mean to belabor the point, but man, once again, this city feels completely different than the other two. And this is all in one game. I don't even really know how they do it. I think it has something to do with like the lighting, obviously, but also each city has distinct philosophies to the way that their streets are laid out. It's just a masterclass in simple, subtle, elegant environment design. As far as specific spots in Las Venturas that you have to see, I've got two for you. The first place I want to bring you is up here, a little bit north of the strip with all the casinos, to a little place called Old Venturas. When you first turn down this street, it may not seem like anything special. It's kind of dark, and you can tell that the buildings are kind of neat, cool, old-timey signs, blah, 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 whatever. But this place really isn't meant to be visited in the day. We need to visit it at night. Ready? Do the Nintendo Switch noise. I mean, what a place. Am I right? Look at that. This whole neighborhood, and really all of Las Venturas, comes alive at night, which is another thing that separates it from the other cities in the game, which really have much stronger vibes during the day. Seeing all these crazy marquees and neon signs for places that you can't go in against the stark black sky, and the fact that because, you know, this is still GTA San Andreas, there just aren't that many NPCs hanging around, it gives this whole area a really unique vibe that's worth spending a few minutes in. One of my favorite details here is on this sign. You can see that the letters are meant to be modeled after those big old marquees that have tons of individual bulbs lighting up the words, but up close you can see that it's just a flat 2D texture, and some of those bulbs are even getting cut off at the edge. And yet, if you back up and look at it from the perspective of actually playing the game, it doesn't matter at all. The effect is basically as good as if they had modeled the bulbs individually. This is a street that's kind of based off of a real place in Vegas where all of the older and more vintage casinos are located before they built all the, you know, the humongous new ones like the Bellagio and the Lucky 38 or whatever. And it really feels like the type of place you'd actually want to come visit if you were taking a tour of this game. Like if I was compiling just a list of tourist attractions in GTA San Andreas, this would be on it for sure. Now the next place I want to head though is going to require me to use something called a jetpack. Normally I would not use a jetpack on a road trip like this, but I really want to show you this place, and I think that's the only way to do it, so I have to. We'll have to drive across town to get there, which does take a minute because the people in this city are horrible drivers, but eventually we make it to the west side of town, and our next little stop, the baseball stadium. The good news is that you shouldn't have any trouble finding parking because the lot is huge and almost always entirely empty, so pick whatever spot you want, hop out of the car, get your jetpack on, and then all you have to do is launch yourself up and over the wall behind us, like so. Look at him go. What you'll find is effectively a fully modeled baseball stadium with the diamond, advertisements, bleachers, dugouts. It's the full deal, even though it's not really accessible. Maybe the most surprising thing about it is that they even modeled some of the inside of the stadium, like where the concessions would be and so on. It's obviously very bare bones, but it's still kind of wild that they put all that in. This stadium is a great representation of something I like to call, well, I guess I have to, environments in game design. Because the fact of the matter is that if you want to make a game that's based on a real place or that sort of passes for a real city, you do have to include things like baseball stadiums. Not necessarily a baseball stadium specifically, but you're going to have to include some buildings that are big, important, and recognizable. And those buildings are going to require you to build a lot of stuff that no one is ever going to look at, but because they might look at it, you have to. For a baseball stadium, that means you probably have to build parking lots, bleachers, a scoreboard. All of this stuff has to be here. You just have to make it if you want to have a baseball stadium in your game. Being a game developer sounds like it sucks. Which I guess is why I call things like this, well, I guess I have to, environments. And they often make for some of the most liminal spaces in games, but also some of the most impressive details. Now, there's one final place we need to stop in Las Venturas before we head back towards our home in Los Santos, and it's maybe my favorite spot in the entire game. All the way on the east side of the city, past the casinos and the hotels, you'll find this little spot, the water pumping station. You can park in the gigantic parking spaces at this strip mall here, and then you just gotta hop out, walk east a bit from the strip mall and hop over this wall, follow the ridge here to the south until you see the big pumping station, and then just walk up beside it. This is a set of giant pipes that seem to be taking water from out of the endless still ocean and giving it to the citizens of Las Venturas. A massive piece of infrastructure that's sitting here quietly on the edge of the map, making all life in this city possible. And that's cool, right? As a world-building detail from Rockstar, it's weird, it's fun, and it's unnecessary. Great. But if you hang out up here for long enough, the thing that hits you isn't the logistical Easter egg. It's just how surreal the edge of the map here is. It's a perfectly straight line with a perfectly straight ridge that perfectly blocks the ocean from view when you're in the city, which is good because if you could see the ocean, it wouldn't really feel like Vegas. Graciously, the game spawns boats down here, so you can hop in one and take a little tour of this whole area if you want to take it in. And the weirdest thing of all is that there are 3 more pumping stations on the north side of the city, which means this whole edge of the map is a perfect right angle with huge pieces of infrastructure attached to it, which for some reason makes it feel like the Truman Show, or kind of like that part in the Hunger Games where they're in that big dome. Like it's a fake curated world supported by hidden giant scary infrastructure rather than a naturally occurring place, which of course it is because this is a video game, but also because it's Vegas, which is kind of true of Vegas. That's very meta. I mean, come on, this is a GTA game. How cool is that? It really might be one of the weirdest places in the series, but obviously there's a lot of competition. Anyway, I think it's time for us to start making our way back to our home in Los Santos, and we've got just 2 more places to stop along the way. The drive out of Las Venturas was mostly uneventful, except that nobody in this city knows how to drive. I don't know if that's an established fact, but I really feel like this region of the game has by far the most aggressive and horrible drivers. So our car is smashed up again, which is fine. And the next place we're going to stop is just across the river here, which is the small towns of Los Santos County. There are a bunch of small towns in the countryside here between Las Venturas and Los Santos. Some are small and simple, but some of them have entire agricultural areas with farms and tractors and buildings to support their economies, or, to make it look like they have economies anyway. Unlike Fort Carson, which we looked at earlier, these towns all do have at least one mission that brings you here, but it's basically always the same mission every single time. There's this character in the game named Catalina who you end up doing crimes with, and she always wants to go terrorize a small town specifically, rob a bank or a gas station, whatever. So that's all these towns are for in the game. They are just wallpaper for these crazy, violent crime sprees. But on my way back home from Las Venturas late at night, I pulled over into this random gas station in one of those small towns that I had terrorized earlier, and I decided just to walk around. And it gave me this really weird feeling that I've been trying to figure out how to describe. You know that feeling when you're on a road trip and you think there's a gas station in a town somewhere, so then you get off the highway and you turn off, but then somehow you end up in like a random residential neighborhood and you're just kind of rolling slowly through some stranger's street in the middle of nowhere, and you look around and you have this realization like, oh, like people live here. Like this is a whole place. I don't know if that has a name, but that's what I felt like walking through these small towns in San Andreas. Staring at the windows of the store at a real photograph of some place that probably existed in 2003, looking at curtains on apartments that you can almost imagine people pulling closed, seeing an old burnt out building and wondering if it was your fault from earlier in the game. I guess it's kind of liminal, right? Trying to avoid using that word because it's obviously super overused, but in a way that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Turns out every video game video is just a liminal space video. It's just all that by different names. Let's get back on the road and head towards home. I ended up taking the state highways back instead of the interstate, if you know what I mean. Sorry, this video is so like America road trip coded. Sorry to my Europeans. Colloquially, a state highway is just a road that you can kind of drive fast on, and it doesn't have any stops on it, but it's usually only 2 lanes, whereas interstates are really big highways. Like when you see those pictures of how awesome America is, that's the interstate. Don't worry about it. But what that meant is that we got to take one of my favorite routes into the city, which is approaching it from the west. You drive through another small town, and then you turn and head through this forest and up a really, really long hill. You'll turn left here at this sign, and then slowly climb up to the top of this other hill. You'll get to this intersection, and then cross over into it, and then, bam, Los Santos. Our home. Look at it. It's beautiful. What a privilege we get to live here. But funnily enough, this side of the city isn't actually the one that we're from. Our home is on the east side of Los Santos, and we're coming in on the west side of Los Santos. And this side of Los Santos, which is the one with the mansions and the Hollywood Hills and the gated properties and stuff, isn't actually one that you get very familiar with while playing GTA San Andreas. You drive through it a good amount, but it's always in passing, which is kind of the polar opposite of GTA 5. Now, I'll play through GTA 5 in detail later this year as we get closer to 6 coming out, but from my memory, the energy of Los Santos that they went for in that game was way more oriented towards this wealthier side of the city. Skyscrapers, Santa Monica Beach, the Hollywood Hills, that kind of iconography. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas did not do that. This game focused on a side of Los Santos that had a lot less money and a lot more trouble, and you spent a lot of time swimming in that atmosphere for the first chunk of the game. So it's interesting to come back through on this side and kind of see a whole bunch of stuff that you really never looked at before. Now, the very last place that I want to take you before we get back to Grove Street isn't some profound, transcendent, thing that represents everything great about San Andreas. Honestly, it's not even the best place on the journey, but it's just a place that while I was driving home, I saw it and I had to show it to you because it's weird. It's under the overpass in North Los Santos. And it's basically what it sounds like. We are under an overpass, except it's not just an overpass. It's like 6 overpasses layered on top of each other. The way these highways crisscross over each other trailer is so weird and impractical that I have to assume it was something that just kind of happened as they started connecting the streets together, rather than something that they set out to create from the get-go. Like when you see how tangled it is, you get the distinct feeling that they made all of the side streets and then they made the highways, but they didn't really think about how they were going to connect them, and they realized the only way that they could connect them is just by making this insane system of ramps and loops that dove underneath each other, which isn't to say that this is totally unrealistic. I'm sure there are places where this happens in real life, but I don't know if I've ever seen one that is this convoluted. Underneath all of it is another totally empty parking lot, which actually is realistic. Plenty of major cities in America have weird liminal space parking lots underneath their overpasses because nobody wants to put anything else there. And I like that this one has trash cans and trees and all this stuff to fill it out, but it still feels very weird, obviously. And that's it. Just a random little roadside stop that I wanted to take you to on the way back home. Now, before we make that final drive back to Grove Street, there is one more thing I have to show you because, in a way, I haven't really been totally honest with you. I have taken you on this lengthy journey across multiple states, really across what feels like an entire country, and I've shown you distant corners of a world with unique biomes, multiple cities, and tons of secluded areas tucked away from each other. But the reality is, there are no distant corners in GTA San Andreas. Despite what you think, nothing in this game is very far apart from anything else. And to show you what I mean, we have to leave the game entirely and fast forward about 17 years from when it was released. This is me standing on top of a building in downtown Los Santos in the definitive edition remake of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which released in 2021. And one of the big differences between this version of San Andreas and the original is that, as you might be able to tell, this new version removed all the fog from the game, which allows you to see much, much further into the distance. In fact, we can basically see the entire map from up here, and it's extremely weird. Remember the top of Mount Chiliad from way back in the beginning of the video? How we drove all the way up those switchbacks and it felt like we were just out in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, that's right here. Like, it's like 6 blocks away from downtown Los Santos. There's Gant Bridge over there, you know, the Golden Gate Bridge. There's that mountain with the weird lights on it, which again is the single farthest point away from home. And there it is, you can just see it. And Grove Street, which is where we're going home, is right down there. But if we turn the camera to the left, that's Las Venturas. That's the city that felt like it was way out in the middle of the desert. This whole journey we've been on takes place in an area less than a third of the size of Grand Theft Auto 5's map. It's an amazing lesson in scale and a testament to how effective using distinct biomes is, along with obviously some aggressive fog and lighting effects. Despite the fact that this game feels like the largest Grand Theft Auto game, it's not, which just goes to show how little the actual size of a map matters to how the big the map feels. I lost my train of thought. Thankfully, they did eventually update the definitive edition to fix this lighting effect, and you can really see the difference with this comparison shot from up on the ridge that we went to overlooking the Carson Dam. It's just an unbelievable difference in vibe. So I'm glad you have the option now. Anyway, back to 2004, back in the van. Let's go home. The sun started setting as we worked our way back across Los Santos, from memory, of course, and we turned that final corner to see the site we started this whole video with, the overpass leading to Grove Street. One more time under the bridge, through that portal into safety, back into the one place in the world that actually feels like ours. And after days on the road, after the creepy gas stations and the mountain lights and the purple desert sky, after standing on the exact farthest point in the game from this exact spot, there's really only one way that a trip through San Andreas can end. You park the van, hop out, head up the sidewalk to your house, walk through the front door, and you save the game. I'm Annie Austin. Thanks for watching.